Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're venturing into the world of Felix Mendelssohn. Born in 1809, gone far too soon in 1847, he was a real powerhouse, a German composer, obviously, but also this celebrated pianist, organist, conductor, teacher, really shaping the early Romantic era.
Absolutely. Mendelssohn has this really interesting spot in music history. He's like a bridge,
Right.
masterfully blending that sort of classical elegance and structure with the emotional intensity that was starting to bubble up in the Romantic period. And his music, it wasn't just a German thing. It got international acclaim back then. And honestly, it still resonates so deeply today.
And you, our listener, you've given us a fantastic set of sources to dig into, covering his life naturally, but also a really close look at his famous Violin Concerto in E minor, plus broader stuff on his innovations and his influence.
Yeah, great material.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get under the skin of Mendelssohn's genius, his legacy, and we'll use that incredible Violin Concerto as a sort of keyhole to view it all.
Sounds like a plan. Where should we start? The beginning.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, his family background, that seems pretty noteworthy right off the bat.
Indeed. Born in Hamburg and into a very prominent family. His grandfather was Moses Mendelssohn, a really highly respected Jewish philosopher.
Wow.
And his father, Abraham, was a successful banker. But interestingly, though they had Jewish roots, Felix himself, he was actually baptized into the Reformed Christian Church when he was about 7.
That detail really says something about the complexities of that time, doesn't it? And it wasn't just his parents influencing his sister Fanny. She was also incredibly gifted musically. It sounds like they were close.
Oh, very. Fanny was a seriously talented pianist and composer herself. Their musical bond was, profound, lifelong, really. They genuinely influenced each other's creative work.
It's almost hard to believe how early his own talent showed up. We're talking composing seriously before he was even 10. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. A true child prodigy. By 1819, he joined the Sing Academy in Berlin, a really key place for music back then.
And then, almost unbelievably, at just 17, he writes the overture to A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Incredible.
That one piece alone, it just shows you his early grasp of orchestration, of, painting pictures with music.
And it's a piece people still adore today. Plus, even back then, he was churning out so much work, a violin sonata, piano sonatas, songs, even an opera. The Marriage of the Camacho. It's just mind-boggling for someone so young.
It really is. It speaks to, both this innate talent and probably a very structured upbringing that really nurtured it.
Okay, so from this amazing start, his career properly takes off. What were some of those moments that really cemented his place, in music history?
Well, there are a few key things.
Yeah.
But that Bach revival.
Yes, 1829, conducting Bach's St. Matthew Passion in Berlin. First time since Bach died, right? That feels monumental.
It absolutely was. And it wasn't just like, let's play some old music. Reviving the St. Matthew Passion reconnected people with the sheer depth of Baroque music when Romanticism was all about intense feeling.
So it positioned Mendelssohn not just as a composer, but as this vital link to the past. It really shaped how people understood and played older music for years, and for him personally. Instant international recognition.
Yeah.
And he was only 20.
Just incredible. And then he starts traveling all over Europe. It seems like he soaked up the atmosphere of these places and poured it straight into his music. Thinking of the Scottish Symphony, the Hebrides Overture.
Exactly. Those trips through Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Britain, they were a huge source of inspiration. The Hebrides Overture, especially the Fingal's Cave one.
Yeah.
It's such a perfect example of his ability to create these, sonic landscapes. You can almost hear the waves, feel the size of the sea and how that main theme works, the chords suggesting the cave.
In Britain, you mentioned Britain.
Yeah.
He was basically a superstar there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
10 visits. A favorite of Queen Victoria.
Oh, yeah. He was huge in Britain, conducted, performed, worked with publishers. He really left his mark on English musical life.
Right.
Then back in Germany, getting the conductor job at the Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra in 1835. That was another big step. He seriously raised the level of that orchestra, made it one of the best in Europe.
Setting new standards for playing.
Yeah.
And then, as if he wasn't busy enough, he founds the Leipzig Conservatory in 1843.
Yep. And it quickly became this top-tier place for music education. He wasn't just writing music, he was actively building the future of music, training the next generation.
That's quite a legacy in itself.
It really is. The conservatory drew students from everywhere. And alongside all this institution building, he's still composing like mad major oratorios like St. Paul and Elijah. And Well, the piece we really want to dig into, the Violin Concerto in E minor, plus those lovely songs without words.
Okay, yes, let's dive into that concerto. Composed between, 1838 and 1844, premiered 1845. It just holds such a special place, doesn't it? For performers, for listeners, what makes it so remarkable?
Well, structurally, for a start, it kind of breaks the mold of the typical classical concerto. Three movements, yeah, but they're played without any pause. Attacca.
All right, Attacca.
It creates this continuous, unified flow.
That seamless feeling is definitely key. Let's get into that first movement, the Allegro molto appassionato in E minor. What jumps out?
Well, the most obvious thing, maybe, is how the soloist comes in almost immediately.
Yeah.
Classically, the orchestra lays everything out first. Here, the violin just leaps in with that main theme. Instant drama, instant connection.
It really does grab you right away. And, okay, it generally follows sonata form, the exposition, development, recapitulation idea.
Telling a story, yeah. Introduce themes, mix things up, bring them back.
But Mendelssohn definitely puts his own spin on it, doesn't he?
For sure. That second theme, the one in G major, it's brought in by the woodwinds, but the violin holds this long note underneath a pedal note. It creates this gorgeous, shimmering sound.
Lovely texture.
But maybe the biggest innovation everyone talks about in this movement is the cadenza.
The show-off bit for the soloist, usually near the end, right?
Exactly. But Mendelssohn flips that. He puts it before the recapitulation, before the main themes come back. And crucially, it's completely written out.
Not improvised.
No improvisation space there. It's super demanding, technically rapid string crossings, that bouncy ricochet bowing. But it's also woven right into the musical fabric of the movement. It's not just tacked on.
So it's integral, not just fireworks.
Yep.
And then, like you said, straight into the second movement. No applause break. Keeps you locked in.
Precisely. Keeps that narrative going. And the second movement, the Andante in C major, it's such a contrast. So lyrical, almost like a song.
Oh, absolutely. Pure melody.
Yeah.
You can really hear echoes of his songs without words there, that expressive quality. How's it structured?
It's basically a ternary form, ADA, like a musical sandwich.
Okay.
You get the main theme from the violin after this lovely little intro bit from the bassoon. Then a middle section in A minor, which gets a bit more agitated, more intense emotionally. And then back to that beautiful, peaceful opening tune. It's all about melody and really subtle but effective orchestration.
A real moment of beauty right in the middle. And then, boom, the energy shifts again for the finale. Third movement, Allegretto non troppo, Allegro molto vivace. E major. It's just so joyful.
It really is. It just explodes out with this trumpet fanfare and this lively, dance-like main theme. Full of energy, very playful.
And the form is sonata rondo. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, it's a clever mix. You get the recurring main theme, like in a rondo keeps coming back, but you also get sections that develop the ideas more like in a sonata.
Okay.
So it feels both familiar and like it's always moving forward. And the violin part, wow. It's incredibly difficult. Fast passages, syncopation, tricky bowing. A real workout.
It definitely has that Midsummer Night's Dream feel sometimes, doesn't it? That lightness, that sort of fairy-like brilliance mixed with virtuosity. And it ends with this absolutely dazzling coda.
A thrilling finish.
Yeah.
So if we look at the concerto as a whole, what are those key innovations, the things that made it so influential?
Well, that structural unity you mentioned is huge.
Yeah.
Linking the movements, the thematic connections. It feels like one complete thought.
Definitely. And the way the soloist and orchestra interact, the violin isn't just showing off over the top. It's the main character, sure, but it's constantly in dialogue with the orchestra, sometimes leading, sometimes weaving through, sometimes accompanying.
It really is like a conversation.
Yeah.
And you mentioned its influence, Tchaikovsky, Sibelius, Rachmaninoff. You can hear traces of this concerto's boldness in theirs, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Things like the written-out cadenza before the recap, the immediate soloist entry, these open doors for later romantic composers. Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, for instance, while very different emotionally, definitely learned from Mendelssohn's willingness to play with the standard form.
So beyond this amazing concerto, he was innovating elsewhere too, right? Pushing boundaries in other ways.
He certainly was. Structurally, yeah. In symphonies and other pieces, he'd tweak sonata form, maybe vary things more in the recapitulation so it didn't just feel like a repeat. Keep that sense of development going. And linking movements, that attacca idea, shows up elsewhere too. Creates that organic unity.
And he was also looking backwards, wasn't he? That passion for Baroque music.
Yes, the Bach revival was key, as we said. But it wasn't just performing Bach. In his own big choral works like St. Paul or Elijah, He brilliantly fused Bach's complex counterpoint, all those interwoven melodies, with romantic harmony and expression.
Hmm.
And he learned from Handel, too, that direct, powerful choral sound, but blended it with romantic orchestration and things like Hear My Prayer or his psalm
It's
settings.
fascinating how he could blend those different worlds.
Wow.
And then there's his role in programmatic music that tells a story or paints a picture.
A real pioneer there. Overtures like the Hebrides or Midsummer Night's Dream use musical ideas, motifs to really vividly evoke places or narratives, basically setting the stage for later tone poems.
Right.
Think about the Hebrides again, that rising and falling theme for the waves, the darker chords for the cave. It's so pictorial. And we have to mention his scherzos. That signature style light, incredibly fast, detailed, almost like fairy music. You hear it first in the string octet, then famously in Midsummer Night's Dream. It was just totally original. Gossamer wings in music, kind of.
That delicate touch is so him. And yet, even with all the romantic feeling, he kept a kind of classical clarity in how he used the orchestra, didn't he?
He did. While other romantics were going for thicker, denser sounds, Mendelssohn often maintained this transparency. You hear it in the Italian Symphony, for example. You can really pick out the individual lines, the colors of the instruments.
So you can really see how all these compositional choices influenced composers who came later. A really wide range of people, it seems.
Totally. On one side, you have composers who really respected tradition, like Brahms. He admired Mendelssohn's structure, his counterpoint. Dvorak, too, you hear echoes in his chamber music, that balance of form and melody. And in England, his impact on the big choral tradition was massive. Perry, Stanford, Elgar all learned from him.
And then there's the whole educational side, the Leipzig Conservatory.
Huge legacy there. It became this major international training ground. People like Grieg, Sullivan studied there. It really helped standardize music teaching. And his conducting. He pushed for using the baton, demanded more precision, more expression from the orchestra. That influenced conductors down the line, like Mahler.
It's interesting, though, how his style, maybe more conservative in some ways, compares to the really radical romantics like Wagner or Liszt, who were pushing harmony and form much further.
Yeah, their aesthetics were pretty different. But even though Mendelssohn wasn't doing the super intense chromaticism or flashy virtuosity in quite the same way, his structural innovations, like we saw in the Violin Concerto, kind of indirectly paved the way for others to be even bolder later on. Even someone like Berlioz, who could be critical of Mendelssohn being maybe too respectful of the past, was definitely influenced by his brilliant scherzos and his ear for orchestral color.
So even where there were disagreements, ideas were still flowing. Now, despite this incredible career and what seemed like a happy family life, his own life was cut tragically short.
It was, yeah. He married Cécile Jean Renaud. They had 4 children. But he did struggle with periods of depression. And losing his sister Fanny, who he was so close to in May 1847, that hit him incredibly hard.
Devastating.
Absolutely. And the sheer pressure of his career, constantly working, traveling, composing, conducting, it definitely took a toll on his health.
It's just heartbreaking, really.
Yeah.
Such a brilliant mind, silenced so early. He died in Leipzig, November 1847, only 38, after a series of strokes.
Yeah. And he left works unfinished, too, like the opera Lorelei and Oratorio Christus. But even with the short life, his legacy is just immense. It's built on the sheer beauty and technical skill of his music, that unique blend of classical and romantic, reviving Bach, leading those institutions, and of course the pieces themselves that people still love.
Absolutely. Things like the Wedding March everyone knows, the Italian Symphony, Hebrides Overture, and that glorious Violin Concerto, they're staples for a reason. So wrapping up our deep dive here, what are the main takeaways about Mendelssohn's place in music?
Well, he's truly pivotal, isn't he? Navigating that shift from classical to romantic with such incredible skill and originality. His structural innovations, especially in the concerto, bringing Bach back to life, his impact on teaching and performing, it all cements him as, well, one of the really crucial figures.
And that Violin Concerto does seem to capture so much of his genius, doesn't it? That perfect balance of clear form and really deep feeling. A true testament to his unique voice.
Absolutely. It's a work that just keeps inspiring everyone who plays it or hears it.
So as you, our listener, reflect on all this, maybe consider this. Mendelssohn was brilliant at respecting tradition while also bravely carving out new creative territory. In your own work, whatever field you're in, what can you maybe learn from that ability he had to synthesize different ideas and commit to both incredible skill and real emotional depth? It's definitely something interesting to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.